I put it on the agenda. It is on the agenda.
Oh, crossing. Oh, is it? Yeah, the two ladies ones we have 5, but not. And then we've had years 14, 18, 20.
Yeah. Summer. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I gotta go. We were just finished on Friday. First day of summer vacation. Very, something weird as that.
All right, I'll wait patiently.
Yeah.
Sharon, after we talked, though, I went in there and they were like demolition.
That's good.
On that day, while we were I'd like to call to order the Lowell Area Schools special meeting of the Board of Education Truth and Taxation hearing. First order of business is roll call of board members. Pat?
Yes, here.
Jessica?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Chair Brian is here. Lori? Here. Tom?
Here.
Jared? Here. All members are present. First item of business is budget presentation. And that is yours. Unless you want to kick off. Mr. Collins.
All right, good evening. Okay, so tonight we'll talk about not only the budget, but also the truth and taxation hearing, where we explain the tax levies that will be levied in the next fiscal year. We'll just let you get started. So the first truth and taxation portion we'll talk about is our sinking fund. This is approved by voters just a couple of years ago. It was renewed by voters. We are not having a headly rollback this year. What that means is if the taxable values go up faster than the rate of inflation, then the amount that we can levy in taxes is rolled back. So our levy would go down. And that's happened in the past because the sinking fund was originally approved at 1 mil, and we're only levying 0.9766 mils. There's not being rolled back this year, but it was rolled back last year. This year, while taxable values did increase significantly, inflation increased faster than the rate of taxable values, so that's why there's no rollback this year. And then you can see here that the estimated collections that we'll have for 2023. And then this is just for your information. If you are curious how the headly rollback is calculated. This year, it's maxed out at 1, but in prior years, in the most recent history, it's been under 1. All right, now for our non-homestead operating millage, this is the one that was just approved in November for 18 mils. Now again, because there's no headly rollback this year, we're able to levy the full 18 mils. We're worried we wouldn't be able to. We assumed that it would be rolling back already this year, but it's not. So we're going to levy the full 18 mils, and then you can see our estimated collections You can see in 2022, the estimated collections were quite a bit lower, and that's because that operating millage had been rolled back significantly, and it was just over 17. So you can see here, we levied 17.0241 mils last year. And then to look at our property tax rates overall for principal residences, so this would be single-family homes primarily. You'll have your debt service millage, which is 7 again this year. It's been in the past, so there's no change there. And then the building and site fund, that's the sinking fund. That was the first one we talked about. And you can see that the millage is the same as last year. For non-homestead properties, commercial businesses are going to be the big one. You've got your 18 mils operating tax plus the debt service and building and site fund. So the 18 mils is not charged on primary residences. And then at the bottom we have just a breakdown of the recent taxable value history. You can see how it's been increasing significantly in recent years. And this is just another way to look at our debt levy. This one, on this section, breaks down all the different debt funds that we have going, so you can see how much is being levied for each one. And this is calculated by our financial advisors. They have a team that look at taxable values, they estimate growth, and they look at exactly how much we need in order to make our debt payments with interest. And so we calculate how much we need to levy for each one, add them up together, and that holds us at 7. So when we go out for a bond issue, they're looking at this in advance to make sure that they have a good idea and they can project out what our levy is going to need to be over the next 25 or 30 years. And they do a very good job because we're right where we're supposed to be. But they help us to make sure that this is calculated in such a way that we're not levying more than what we need to make those debt payments. If for some reason we needed to levy less, if the 7 mils was taking too much, we'd be required to not levy the full 7. We'd have to reduce that in order to only collect what we need. So now we'll talk about budget. I'm pulling forward the big 4 that I talked about at the last meeting. These are enrollment, our per pupil foundation allowance, and wages and benefits. Those are the biggest items that drive our budget on the revenue and the expenditure side. So those are the ones that we really pay closest attention to. As it is only June 12th, there are a lot of unknowns. We don't know what our enrollment will be next year. We don't know what the per pupil foundation allowance is going to be. That's 2 of the big ones. We also don't know what many of our grant allocations will be. However, we do have preliminary allocations for our title and IDEA grants, and those serve students with additional needs and special education students. We'll get final allocations for those in the fall after we've started the year. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, so we'll see. And then we're constantly keeping an eye on inflation and how that's impacting our operating expenses. So for the 23-24 budget, we're assuming an enrollment of 3475. That's a 30 per pupil decrease from last fall. We think that this is conservative, yet also not out of the realm of possibility. Our spring count was 3485, so this isn't that far off. If it's more than this, great, but we want to plan for lower than we think will actually happen so that we're able to meet our kids' needs when we're looking at our budget. We're also assuming a foundation allowance per pupil of $9,600. This is a $450 increase over the current year. This is roughly what the governor's budget proposed, and the Senate and House were on either side of that budget. So still a big unknown, but that's what we're going to budget for until we know more. We're assuming that the foundation blended count is going to be 90% of the fall count and 10% of the prior spring count. That's how it's been recently, say for I wanted to mention it just because one of the budgets proposed at the state level did propose to change the blended count for next year. So I'm assuming that it's gonna stay a status quo, but that remains to be seen. We are planning on having our last year with ESSER grant funds. We are anticipating an increase in special education funding at the state level, although again, we don't know exactly what that will be yet. At the last meeting, I talked about the MIPSR's rate increase offset, a lot of words. They're increasing the retirement rate on our staff, but they're also giving us some revenue to help cover that. And I mentioned that my calculations were showing it was not going to cover it, but they were saying it should cover the whole increase. So I had some conversations with colleagues here in Kent County, and there was consensus that it definitely does not cover it all. So I'm going with my calculation this time, and it's 53% is what I'm estimating it will cover, not 100%. And then we also are including in our assumptions a few grants that we were using to offset ongoing expenditures in the past year or two, and those are expiring this year. Lots of moving parts. And then for our expenses, we've adjusted our salaries based on contract agreements. We've increased the MIPSR's rate, as we know it will go up. The health insurance cap is going up 4.1%. What that means is the state tells us that we can only pay this much for employee-only coverage, you can pay this much for two-person coverage, and you can pay this much for family coverage. And every year, they issue a memo saying, okay, now those caps are going up a certain percentage. And so our percentage for this next year is 4.1%. So that's built into these estimates as well. We've included the purchase of one new bus. We typically do 3, at least in recent history, we've done 3 a year. We're including 1 this year. We've maintained the individual school budgets that they use for supplies and programs. And then we've included increases just for inflationary costs. Typical costs that we've baked in are about 4 or 5% for utilities, repairs, supplies, that kind of thing. So on the revenue side, our projections at the moment are $48,623,594. And you can see that it's split up of property taxes, that's the 18 mills, non-homestead operating millage. Other local revenue would include athletics costs, and then other, just various things that come in, facility use, that type of thing. State sources are primarily our per pupil foundation allowance, but there are other grants that fall into that. Federal sources is all grants, and then inter-district sources would be, most of it's going to be revenue we receive from Kent County ISD. For our expenditures, I wanted to start just showing the types of expenditures that we have. So you can see that the bulk of it is salaries and benefits. It's 82% of our budget, and then the rest fall well below that. And then if we look at it by function, this is less fun to look at, but this breaks it down how the board would be approving the budget. Basic program is going to be elementary, secondary education, preschool education, and summer school. Added needs are going to be special education and compensatory education. Pupil services would be nursing, psychology, speech pathology, those sorts of services. Instructional staff support, that's going to be curriculum, media center, and then so on and so forth, the less interesting parts of administration, operations, and such. And the total expenditures that we're budgeting at the moment are $49,418,504. So if we put it all together, we're showing that our expenses are exceeding our revenues next year by almost $800,000. We are at the February meeting, we projected that our ending fund balance this year would be $6.752 million. So when we take that into account, I'm estimating that our ending fund balance will be just under $6 million, and that'll bring us to 12.1% fund balance. That percent fund balance is going to change based on what the actual expenditures are. It will also depend on what the actual beginning fund balance is. And we won't know that for sure until audit season. So these are estimates still. We still know that we have a lot of work to do on this budget to make sure that we narrow that gap as much as we can. One of the things we've done is try to absorb positions as people retire or resign. And so we're doing that as much as we possibly can. I wanted to bring this slide back. This was from last meeting as well. And I'll just call your attention. This is a calculation that the ISD did. And I'll just boil it down here. For Lowell, they calculated that we would need $449 per student of an increase in order to cover our salary and benefit cost increases. So that's just to cover wages and benefits. It does not cover any other expenditures that we know are going up, like operations or gas for our buses, anything like that. And then I showed this last time too. I updated some of the figures, but at the bottom line, we have, depending on what we get at the state level for per pupil and how many students we have in the district next year, our budget performance can vary widely. So on the conservative end, I've calculated $9,500 per kid with 3,460 students, and then at the other end, $9,700 per kid and 3,500 students. So there's a wide range there. We're not sure where we're going to fall, but we do expect the state to pass a budget hopefully at the end of this month, but July at the latest is what we're saying. And then we've seen this one before. I wanted to bring it back just to remind everyone that those COVID grants are going to be ending after this next fiscal year. So like I said, we're projecting that this is our final year with these funds. We do not anticipate to get an extension. The Treasury, U.S. Treasury has made it pretty clear that they are not interested in extending the funds. So we are making as full use of those dollars as we possibly can this year. And then when we talk about the fiscal cliff and we look forward to the year after next, we are going to have a significant gap in our revenues and expenditures after these ESSER dollars go away, that we're going to need to make some decisions on how we close that gap. So based on just rough calculations, there's nothing specific, and this is never going to be the dollar amount. I'm showing that we're going to have about $2.4 million that we need to close in fiscal year 25. Again, that's not going to be the number. It will be something different, but it should be something close. I had an auditor tell me, whatever you say it's going to be is exactly what it's not going to be. So it's just an estimate. It's a way to get us on track to help us make this decision. And that's what I have. Anybody have questions? And I can go back a slide if there's something you wanted to see and ask questions.
Sonia, what percentage of our fund equity does $2.1 million approximately?
2.4 million.
Of 4 million, how does that look? How many percentage points of the equity?
2.4 out of 49 million would be almost 5%.
Okay.
Any other questions? Public comments? With that, adjournment is in order. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Lori. Support?
Support?
Support by Jennifer. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Next order of business is our Lowell area Schools Board of Education meeting, regular meeting for June 12th. Calling this meeting to order at 7:09. Additions or changes to, I think you have to stand and play the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
One change.
We did not hear back from the state yet on whether or not we are allowed to approve the Chartwell's contract. We do have to have their approval before you make your approval. So we're gonna table that vote until the workshop meeting in June.
Item D in the action items, Chartwell contract renewal is stricken from the agenda. Any other changes? Hearing none. Public comments on agenda items?
None.
Thank you. Our first report.
This one is.
Agenda item?
Yeah.
I apologize. It's Doug Lee.
One of this is relating to the MASD membership. I go to school boards across the state, and one thing that's pretty darn consistent is every school board member says the same thing. We can't do this, we can't do that, we're told to do this, we can't speak to the public. And there's one common denominator through the entire state of Michigan that you guys go through as a membership, is the National School Board Association. The National School Board Association is a lobbying group. It's not sanctioned by the state, it's not codified in law, it's a membership. No different than if this school board adopted, we're gonna be part of the National Rifle Association, and then they consulted how to bring guns into our school. It's the same thing. It's just a different organization. But yet, school boards and school board members, you're voted by the public. What you need to do, as you're thinking through it carefully, is you need to always look at voting your conscience. No matter what this National School Board Association tells you you can and cannot do, they do not have the authority to tell you you can and cannot vote yes or no on any item or even answering public comment. That's a myth. One of you need to try a no and see what I'm talking about. I go across the whole state, it's exactly the same, because it's the same organization throughout the entire state. So I just want to vote your conscience, think about things, instead of what other people tell you that you should think or should do. You're told we need to be in unison up here. That's what you're told. You're told this every single time. You don't have to be in unison. You need to vote your conscience and the people like you. The second thing I do want to bring up, I owe this board an apology, okay? I came here to speak, and I think my words were misinterpreted. I had no desire to speak to undermine the people of Lowell. That was never my intention, so I apologize. You probably remember what I'm talking about, okay? So it was totally misinterpreted. After I read and saw the tapes, I thought I owed you an apology, which I do, and I owe people of Lowell an apology as well. But the National School Board Association is just that. It's a lobbying group. It does not give each of you the authority to tell you what you can and cannot do. As a matter of fact, the attorneys they assign to you, you should ask the attorneys their qualification, because as a business person, when I go to attorney, there's attorneys for collections, there's attorneys for business law. So when you're being advised by one of their staff attorneys, ask them what their qualifications are. Not every attorney, and nor do they employ attorneys that might be giving you the best advice to your answer to your question. So just take that in mind. All I'm asking, vote your conscience. Thank you. First order of business is reports. We have one report today, and that is on district goals for a progress report. Mr. Vandermeulen will provide a progress report on the goals and benchmark assessment scores for the end of the school year.
Yeah, thanks. Hi. So you have, I think in your packet, the benchmark assessment report. So you've heard me talk about this in the past. In fact, the last 2+ years, we're required to come to the board at a public meeting and report on our benchmark assessments in terms of growth. We use NWEA or MAP assessments and have have for some time, to look at both proficiency and growth in math and reading. So at the start of the year last fall, there was a report about the goals themselves, reported in February, and this is the end of the report. So you've seen this format and this template before, just following through with what's required. If you look at the first page at the bottom right, excuse me, it does show our reading and math growth in grades 1 through 8. This will, after tonight, be on our transparency page, which is located on our school's website as required. For the reading, we did have 62% of all of our students meet their growth target from fall 2022 to spring 2023. And for math, we had 57% meet their growth target from fall to spring. And then below that, you can see that itemized by grade level. I should also mention that this is about showing growth from the beginning to the end. So recognize that many of our students scored very high to begin with, and we're trying to obviously have all of our students continue to grow. Our goal would be that all students, in fact, reach their growth target. But that's, that particular language is probably not realistic in truth, that 100% of all of our students who were tested would meet their growth targets. These are strong numbers. If we look at you know, the rest of the country that also takes the math test by grade level. If you look at proficiency in particular, if you looked at our students that are at or above grade level for math and reading, just based on the mean RIT score that other students the same age score around the country, we're very strong in those areas. So overall, we have positive data to report. I would say, and you may notice, for 5th grade math in particular, that growth of 25%, I think that's right, yep, is lower than what we would have liked and is different than what we have seen in the past. Today, the elementary principals and I actually met with someone named Pam Jones from NWEA. She came in and met here in person. We had a long conversation about a number of things, but we did talk about the 5th grade math in particular and did some brainstorming about why that particular score is lower than what we've seen in the past. We're going to continue to work on that. I think within 5th grade, we need to continue to analyze the enrichment for kids that are scoring very high to begin with, and take a look at the resources we're able to offer those kids when kids are starting the year by scoring very high. So again, it doesn't mean that 25% of our 5th graders are at or above the mean RIT score. It means that's the percentage that met their growth target, with many of the kids starting quite high to begin with. But that said, that's something we need to continue to investigate. You know, we've adopted a new curriculum, K-5, for next year in Reveal. It'll be interesting to see once that's fully implemented. There are a number of differentiation and enrichment kinds of lessons within that particular curriculum. You know, that will lend itself hopefully to higher growth rates in math by the end of the year. So that's just one particular area I wanted to point out, but also to mention that the elementary principals and I met with you know, someone from MAC today to talk about that. Lastly for me, on the second page, you can see those growth targets broken down by demographic information, economically disadvantaged students, female, male, etc. If you do glance through those, my opinion is the good news is we don't really see a lot of variance. In fact, if you look at our economically disadvantaged students and what their growth rates were for reading and math, they're very similar to our district as a whole. So I think I mentioned in the past, and if you remember we've talked about, Lowell's economically disadvantaged students generally are outperforming economically disadvantaged students from other districts. So that's something I think to celebrate. And at the very bottom, we've listed our Acadians benchmark data. That was formerly called DIBELS testing, and that's specific to reading fluency. And so we have percentages of students at or above benchmark based on that Acadians testing, and those are very strong numbers. So that's the report, which was required through state law by the end of the year. We'll see in the future whether the state continues to require us to report this information. Generally speaking, in the fall, when we look at September and October, that's when I come to the board with broader data based on SAT scores, PSAT scores, MSTEP data, et cetera. That will occur again in the fall as it has in the past.
Dan, is there advantages to understanding the growth rate by those, the criteria that you had mentioned, students that are in the top half of the educated, just to look at, those numbers may be a little bit based on that criteria, because that did intrigue me. If we have a high number that's in that area,
Yeah.
it could be harder to try to get percentage points in that arena versus.
Yeah, if you look at, for example, someone who at the end of their 4th grade year scored a 185 or a 190 RIT score, which would be a high score for the end of 4th grade. And it can be a little harder for that particular student than in 5th grade to meet the expected growth targets. But really, when you look at the RIT scores themselves, those targets are set by comparing those students versus other students around the country at the same grade level with the same RIT score. It's a valid, reliable assessment that we've used for a number of years. I first heard from one of our elementary schools where there was concern about 5th grade math in particular in the map, and then as we looked into it, we found out that really occurred across their district, no matter what school. And so, I think we just need to continue to look at ways to challenge those kids in math in 5th grade in particular, in all grades, but that start high, how do we differentiate the lessons? I know we did some experimenting too with, on certain days of the week in 5th grade, taking kids that have shown that they already knew the material and doing some enrichment, and then kids that needed some remediation and breaking them up into small groups. But I think we need to just continue to investigate that. I'm not sure what all the answers are, but it's something we're going to sink our teeth into more. But overall, again, very strong proficiency scores and strong growth rates in the other areas. But I do want to point out that one piece.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have a quick question. So these are kind of required numbers. Is there any point where you compare those required growth rates to the raw RIT data so you can see that, or is that something that isn't required so we haven't done it?
We do internally,
Okay.
for sure. In each building and through the grade level teams, principals work with those teams. And individual teachers are well aware of what their map data shows, and they break that down by student and work on paths based if students are lower or higher or in between, to how to best serve them. One of the nice things about the Reveal curriculum as well is that it aligns with math, and so it'll help us better determine for teachers, if a student scores here, what do they need specifically? Math has given us that information, but then that will combine with the new math curriculum to align, to help better inform teachers. As a teacher, I think it's one thing to look at a number and wonder, but when you can get information that really helps you do something differently with instruction or through small groups with kids, that's much more useful.
Right.
And that's, frankly, when we look at MSTEP scores, for example, it doesn't give us as good as information as what math does, or even what PSAT and SAT does. So it's a matter of using that information to adjust instruction and having those collaborative opportunities, especially through like the PLT times, to have those conversations and try to make those systems work.
So internally, we compare that
Sure.
growth rate versus the raw score to see
Yeah.
what's really going on.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the next order of business is our action items. Our first action item is our budget appropriations. Annually, the Board of Education must adopt the resolutions that appropriate funds for the various budgets. The 2023-24 budget is shown on the following pages, which we all received in advance. General fund appropriations, food service fund appropriations, special revenue fund appropriations. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the budget appropriation resolution for the general fund, food service fund, and the special revenue fund for the 2023-2024 school year. Could I get a motion to bring this item to order?
Point of order though, are we allowed to vote on the food services budget, or was that,
You can vote on the budget.
we can vote on the budget?
You can't
but
vote on
we-
the contract with Chartwell.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to bring the budget appropriations to order?
I'll support.
Motion by Pat, supported by Lori. Discussion. Comments on?
I'll just offer a thanks to Ms. Hodge for the work that she did to prepare the budget and just do such a great job of painting the picture and articulating where we're at with the budget and some of the unknowns that we have. We are taking a conservative approach with that deficit that we see. We're going to continue to find ways to, if there are ways to trim costs as we go through to continue to find that and just plan for next year. We'll be facing an even bigger deficit with that.
I guess I just want to point out too and thank, as Mr. Fowler did, Mrs. Hodge and her office, her staff for the work, because I think it's important for us all to remember that we are required by law to build this budget this month and pass this budget this month, when we don't have all the information we really need for that. And she alluded to that in a number of different ways in the hearing prior to this, but at least we do have the opportunity, and we will see this again in a few more months when we will, I'm sure, have an amendment once count day comes along, once the state decides they can go to work and do their budget. And so I appreciate the amount of quality guesswork and but very intelligent work that's gone into this, and I'm happy to vote for it now, but also we know, and it's good to know that we will amend it and it will become even a much more accurate budget later in the year.
I'd probably just add on to that, the importance of that fund balance that we spend a significant amount of time making sure that we maintain is also a very critical component of that, and allows us the ability to be able to continue to move in this path with the high accuracy of our great guesswork. Anything else? If not, vote is in order. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next order of business is our millage rates. With that, annually, the Board of Education must adopt the millage rates for operations, building and site, and debt fund. The millage rate for the 2023-24 school year is as follows: general fund, 18 mils, building and site fund, 0.976 mils, debt fund, 0.780 for 2015, 16A is 0.16 mils, 16B is 0.58 mils, 16C debt fund 2.2, 2019 debt fund 1.2, 21 debt fund reference with a 0.96, and then debt fund SCR 2 is 1.12. Recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the millage rates for the 2023-2024 school year. Could I get a motion to bring this item to order? Motion by Jennifer.
I'll support.
Support by Tom. Discussion on the millage rates.
to just offer, a gratitude to the community for support of the operating mills, the 18 mills non-homestead, in addition to the sinking fund, in addition to the 7 mills to maintain the facilities that we are able to offer for our students. And I think, seeing the 2021, those are examples of where we're able to refinance and refund some of those bonds early to save money for the taxpayers involved as well. So it does reflect, the judicious management of these funds for the taxpayers as well.
Any questions? Hearing none, vote is in order. All those in favor of approving the millage rate, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is our MASB membership. Recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the MASB membership for the 2023-24 school year as recommended. Could I get a motion for the membership?
So moved.
Motion by Lori. Support?
I'll support.
Support by Jared. Any discussion on the membership?
This is an annual piece that comes before the board. Just would remind that MASB does provide professional development to our board members. It does provide updates for what's going on in Lansing and other areas as well. And, to the comments that we heard earlier, they are a lobbying organization as well. And so MASB does represent your voice in Lansing. And so I encourage board members, if you do have opinions and things that you would like to see, MASB is advocating on your behalf with our legislators in Lansing.
Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, vote is in order. All those in favor of the MASB membership, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Chartwell contract renewal was void from this, so our next order of business is our K-5 math manipulatives. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of K-5 math manipulatives from EAI Education totaling $35,313.16 as discussed at the May 22nd, 2023 work session. Could I get a motion to bring the math manipulatives to order? Moved by motion by Tom. Could I get support?
Support.
Support by Lori. Discussion on this item.
See if Mr. Vanderbielen has anything to add, but it is an important piece of instruction to just have these hands-on tools for students to feel and use those concepts they're learning on paper, but to have tools to enhance their learning as well.
Yeah, the hands-on manipulatives are really part of the curriculum purchase. It's a separate vote and itemized out because we found a less expensive way to do it than to order through McGraw-Hill. As we said last time, we did an extensive inventory of items that teachers already have, so we didn't want to duplicate items. And then based on the pilot group's input and working with McGraw-Hill, we put together this list, and the quote from EAI was less than the quote from the other company, Dynex, which is why we're recommending this.
I appreciate the thoroughness of the quote going and skipping the middle person going direct. Appreciate had multiple reports on our math curriculum. We have data also, shown today that, maybe looking at a different, some additional materials could be beneficial, and I think the staff had maybe already, saw that and was looking at the change. So I appreciate that work. Any other comments or discussion?
Well, I was just gonna say, not knowing much about math, when you, 12-sided dice, 20-sided dice, so what do you use those for?
I think just learning numbers, counting, number sense, computational skills, working with kids to roll dice, making predictions, probability.
the predictions are gonna be a lot harder if you've got a 12-sided dice as opposed to
Yes,
a
I was just
16 dice, right? I do know that, but I don't know.
There's a lot of games and things that you can do with, multiplying and numbers, when you have a die that you can roll and get 18 or 12 or something, as opposed to, you can say, okay, what are the possible numbers? Someone come up with a number that will multiply to make 12, or multiply to make 18. Whereas if you just roll something that's 1 through 6,
Yes.
you don't get too advanced, or it's not quite as fun.
Think back to your days as a kid playing Yahtzee.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Hard to get Yahtzee. Makes that game last longer.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, a vote is in order. All those in favor of K-5 math manipulatives, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is our MHSAA membership. Annually, all school boards in the state of Michigan are requested to adopt the Michigan High School Athletic Association resolution in order to participate in state-sanctioned athletic contests. The recommendation is that the Board of Education adopt the MHSA membership resolution for the 2023-2024 school year. Could I get a motion to bring this item to order? Motion by Jennifer. Support? Support. Support by Tom. Discussion or comments?
Yeah, I think you stated it well, that it is an annual resolution, and by the board approving this resolution, it allows us to participate in MHSAA sanctioned state tournaments next year. Talk a little bit later about how our kids did this spring and some of those.
Any other items to discuss? Hearing none, a vote is in order to adopt the MHSA membership. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our last voting item is our consent grouping. This is the approval of minutes for the 2023 regular meeting, May 8th, 2023 regular meeting, May 22nd special meeting, and May 22nd, 2023 work session. Recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the minutes as presented. Could I get a motion to bring the consent grouping to order? Motion by Lori. Support?
Support.
Support by Jennifer. Any questions on the consent grouping or comments?
So, you have a separate packet with the statement of monthly seats and expenditures, as well as just the update of the status report of those budgets. So you can see that in that packet. Also included in the packet is the hiring of our operations director. And so we are recommending that the board approve the hiring of Greg Pratt in that role. Greg, as you know, is the former superintendent of schools, of Lowell Schools, but just his knowledge of facilities, processes that we have, a lot of the contracts that we have with some of our vendors. It's a unique opportunity to take advantage of his leadership and his skills that he brings to that role. So, looking forward to that. I talked to him today. He toured the whole district yesterday and made his lists of things that he saw, the grounds, and he's already working on his list of projects that he sees.
Did you have to have a map for the middle school, since it's a lot different from
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the consent grouping? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is our discussion items. First discussion item is our human resource update by Mr. Shah.
Yeah, and right now we just lost two influential workers, Tim Berge in grounds and Steve Nelson in maintenance. After years of service, will be done on June 30th. So it's a pivotal time to bring somebody in operations who knows the district, knows the people. That job posting's out there. We're looking to start interviews soon. As all of you expect, and we do too. We want the grounds to look nice. We want the schools to run efficiently, effectively, and there's a lot of maintenance that goes along with it, but Tim and Steve both did a great job for a number of years. So those are the two latest retirements. We've had a few resignations recently too, so we're actually in the interview process for 2 teaching positions. One at Cherry Creek Elementary and then one at the high school. And then also getting ready for the para bid meeting that I talked to you about before, which is now in July because we start earlier. We've been placing paras, kind of recapping, there's 3 different types. You have kind of supervisory, indoor-outdoor paras that might be your recess or pickup, drop-off. You have your least restrictive environment paras who are ones that may be dealing with behaviors in classrooms and different areas. And then you have your one-to-one that are based on medical needs. 504 plans, IEPs, kind of dictate where that goes. So we're trying to work with the principals, finalize that, place the appropriate individuals in the building. And the principals from there, and I always say it and I have to reiterate it, have to take the individuals they have, so I always call them positions. And many times our paraprofessionals get so hooked with working with that same child over and over again, but the principals each year have to take a look at their building and sometimes they have to change it up. So that's another difficult piece too. While we love the consistency, you still have to function at high levels, and sometimes kids grow out of those behaviors. So like when you hear Dan talk about the tiered approach, MTSS, you can set that kid up for great success down the road, and we don't need parents. So we have to shift them around. So the principals, assistant principals, directors, they do a lot of work to place our paraprofessionals. And fortunately, we've done a good job filling those spots too. So outside of the 2 recent retirements and then a couple resignations, we're doing okay. And we continue to march through the interview process, and we're still in a pretty good place. We got out real early for the jobs we needed, and now we're just, I don't want to say taking our time, but we have a little bit more time to make sure we get the right person. And then lastly, I can't recall if it was last time or the time before, the nurses talked about the different things they do in the buildings. Well, HealthPar is the company that we use for Delin. And when Delin came in, she worked with Linda McElroy, and they start every morning in that hallway, and they collaborate, work together, and then they go out and take care of the necessary things across the district. HealthPar is great because they send me data pieces every month. And I just received the yearly data for having Delin, and just Delin alone, I'm misplacing the pages, and the 4 main categories they focused on were care plan, emergency action plan, and medication consent. That's 1. Direct student care was 2. Staff training was 3, and then MERT team development was 4. So in those 4 areas, they were able to pull data. And across the year, Delin alone faced 383 encounters where there was the recording of one of those 4 areas or one of those 4 components where she was dealing with students or helping them or assisting them. There were 3 critical incidents that occurred where Delin actually provided her on-the-job training and expertise, just like she would have done in a hospital. It just happened to be in a school or in an office. And then overall, Delin provided a total of 133 education training encounters with staff. And this ranged from CPR, AED, certification, seizures, diabetes, tube feedings, asthma, anaphylaxis, and head lice. And then also, one important piece to all that is she always was taking a look at policies and seeing how they matched up against other districts with Neola and really diving into that. But this was Delin alone, and Delin also had Linda, who's been with us for years on a part-time status. But you really saw the ground that Linda made too. And that data alone was just based from HealthPar. I don't have the numbers on Linda's, but hers increased as well. She was in and out of buildings, taking care of the diabetic needs students. For one, that just sticks out because they were always convening and making sure that they had everybody covered. So the ground that they made, this really just backs up what you saw in the presentation. They have made a lot of ground, and the PD and the training has been phenomenal. We're moving into every department that we can, as fast as we can, because it does take time. So those two together have been pretty great, so at least for another year, you know, we'll be able to have a health bar nurse, and then Linda McElroy, who is our part-time worker, has been with us for a long time, so I thought the board would wanna hear that, and the community as well, because it is making an impact, so.
How many days are,
Dylan?
yeah, well, overall, how many school days do we have? You know, we have roughly, what, 600 encounters that she had alone over how many days? Is that 3 a day, 4 a day?
So it'd been around for 185 days, but 100,
Yes.
yeah, this year was later. But, so what was that? Let's just say October 1, I don't have the exact date. Next year, because of the PD that occurs before school starts, and then the wrap-up PD that you need to do, or even just wrapping up care plans, communicating with parents, getting on the student management system and updating things, we're bringing Dylan on for 185 days. And then Linda wanted to be part-time only, and then help Dylan through the entire process, will be with us 3 days a week, for 18 hours a week. So,
I only comment on that, thinking of the amount of
Yeah.
time that isn't taken away from teachers and other support staff, and allowing specialists that know how to handle these situations to actually handle, what, 5 or 6 a day?
And for a long time, and it's nobody's fault, I mean, our admin assistants in the office were acting like nurses, to be honest, and, you know, we did the best we could. But we had a lot of admin assistants that learned a lot about diabetic training, and if you looked in the job description, I'm not sure it's there. So, you know, now we're able to really cover more ground. I mean, you hear it too, I mean, the presentation, the principals, I mean, we're just doing good things as far as the medical needs are concerned.
And in-house training provided.
Yeah, that's, PD's number one for me. I mean, even earlier, we talked about, you know, money that goes into negotiations, and the one thing we always go in negotiations are wants, and one of the number one wants is always PD. Somehow we have to get professional development for all staff. And many times we talk more about the teachers and the LEA, and I think it's just by habit, but, you know, we want the bus drivers to have it. We want the admin assistants, the paraprofessionals. I mean, everybody in this district, if we can provide good, solid PD, you know, that's what we're all about. And yeah, those 2 nurses have done a fabulous job bringing those professional development needs to us.
Dustin, in terms of the defibrillators that we have on, you know, the buildings, do we have a set number of people that are trained on those? Is everybody trained on them? Is it
No,
just
they run through set numbers, and then there's checks and balances. Right now, I know that the 2 ladies this year, you know, we're checking on everything, making sure it's up to date. MERT teams were number 1 in the process, because it's your first response in the building, so they made sure they were all up to date, certified in the areas they need to be, educated in the areas they need to be, and then from there they started to move below and start tackling different subgroups who needed those trainings on all the different machinery you might use.
do the subgroups like include like coaches?
Yeah. Yep, so Mrs. Crowley always did that with coaches, CPR, you know, Dr. Russell and all do the same, but training coaches as well.
I would add with the AEDs that, you know, we're now, I want to say we have 17 or 18 across the district, and the batteries expire, and then the pads that go in them, there's an expiration date on those as well. So to Brian's point about just taking stress off, the nurses are responsible for making sure that those are operational and in date with those items that do expire. So it's just one more item of stress that's been relieved with keeping those AEDs functional as well.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Yeah, that's all I have. If there's any other questions.
Hearing none, next discussion item is our budget update. Anything?
If you'd like another update.
Hearing none, that's our further discussion. Next item is our curriculum update.
Yeah, just two things to mention. number one, all of our summer learning programs kicked off today. Well, not all of them, almost all of them. So our Arrows Camp, which is the summer school, the Math on the Move, which is the 5th to 6th grade transition, the Arrow Readers on the Move kicked off today. So all of that started today for the first 3-week cycle leading up to the 4th of July week, and then 3 weeks after that. So just wanted to mention that. Later in the summer, we have a partnership with Lowell Wellness, and our wellness camp will take place the first 2 weeks of August. But just to remind the community and the board that lots of activities and learning go on in the summer as well. And then the second thing is, at the May workshop, we had some discussion about mission and vision, and the vision work that had been done, represented by that plaque in the back with the pillars back in 2002. So our plan is to have some potential options for vision statements to get input later this month at the workshop. Been playing around with the work that's been done in the past, the balanced prepared learners, which is reflected, the district model, which is learners today, leaders tomorrow, red arrows for life. I know Lori made some comments about great communicators and critical thinkers. So just playing around with some different language, coming up with some different options, really just to try to capture the vision statement in a written form, in a paragraph form. So we'll come back to that at the end of this month. Those were the two things for.
Next order of business are public comments. If there are no other discussion items, I'm sorry.
Kim Lum.
Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday. My name's Kim Lum, and I live in the district. I was trying to think of my words for this time, and I have two. One is empowered, and the other is unique. I believe that Lowell area schools wants to be sure that all their employees know that they have a stake in what goes on for Lowell area schools. That they are empowered to think about that rather than just kind of punch a clock and do their thing and punch out. And that their uniqueness is very welcome. Here's why I know that. Arrow Readers, which used to be called Camp Read-A-Lot when it started long ago. Arrow Readers is for all kids that live in Lowell area schools. And it came about because a group of teachers wrote a grant to the Arts Council and got some funding for the accelerated reader program and books. And it evolved and changed and moved on from there. And then it traveled, so then it became Arrow Readers on the Move. It's for all kids, not just kids that go to this school district, but they have to live in this school district. And there's more. Think about that. There's this girl, I don't know how old she is now. She's still out there, probably with a cowboy hat she earned the first summer we did it. That was her motivator. And Jared's sister was involved in it too, way back at Ento. Another way that teachers and staff are empowered in Lowell is by a grant that they wrote, and I've read all about it, and I hope you have too, about the Strumming My Sixth String program that was done at our high school. If you haven't read about it, you need to find the article. It's on Facebook. I'm sure it'll be in other places too. And our kids got to design a guitar and play it. And I think it took all school year, all the things they had to learn. Guess what? Mr. Phillips, I do not know him. I think he felt empowered to try a unique idea. You know, there's a lot of other ways. I couldn't think of all of them. But I'm on the museum board in Lowell now. Those kids come there and learn. They come there and they learn all about Lowell, this place. And part of it started because a teacher named Diane Teich put out a program, got a grant, and it grew. It grew beyond just the third graders in her room. Now it's the third graders in all of Lowell. We need to think about, what is it that we want to do? Can we collaborate more with other entities within our district and even beyond? I know there's things going on with the Lowell library system. I know there's things with the Red Barn Market. What else could it be? Please give it a try. Encourage and empower and look for uniqueness.
Just want to thank Dan and Sonia for their reports tonight. Kind of eye-opening, I think, for the board members to see and hear the things that are being reported. Not necessarily the best of news, and definitely things that have been talked about in the past, and just starting to wonder, a lot of the things that I hear being talked about are survival tactics and ways that we can keep going status quo right up until we fall off that fiscal cliff. And instead of doing that, instead of comparing Lowell to other schools and other districts, why can't we compare Lowell with Lowell? Why can't we look back at a time when Lowell was thriving and enrollment was booming and everything was great, and look at what we were doing then that might be different than what we have chosen to do now? We have chosen a path where we have taken money that has strings attached, and we've brought in programs into our schools and books into our schools and agendas into our schools that have resulted in where we are at today. We need to think hard. It's time to buckle down and take action. I want to speak positively of the schools that my boys go to. I am slammed on the daily for being negative. I'm not the one being negative. I am merely the messenger. And I want to speak positively and talk about all of the good things and only the good things that go on in Lowell schools, but we have a lot to fix up before I can do that. And if you care, as a board member, if you care and you want to try to dig in and fix things up, I have a 30-minute project for you this summer. If you could find 30 minutes this summer. I have a list that I came across of books that portray pedophilia and abuse of minors. And I was hoping beyond all hope that I spent 30 minutes of my time, 30 minutes, that's it, to go through our Destiny catalog system and hope beyond all hope that we didn't have any of these in our schools, but we do. And if you care, you should not want to be presenting this type of information to kids. Parents are afraid and they do not trust what's going on in these schools right now. If you care, get with me. You know how to find me. I'm here to help and I want to be positive. And if I'm this only voice out here and no one cares, then why are people writing cease and desist orders against me? If I'm just one lonely voice, right? Thank you.
Emma Sage.
My name is Emma Sage, and I just recently graduated from Lowell. Most of you probably recognize me from being the student council representative this year. The night of the May board meeting, though, I was late and could not give my report because I had a lacrosse game, which we won, so don't worry. I am also playing lacrosse in college. Lacrosse and student council are a few of the many opportunities Lowell has given me. Through all of the activities I have done, I have received an insane amount of support from teachers, administrators, and my fellow peers. I want to first thank the board and every other supporter here for making Lowell an amazing community for a student like me to thrive in. I am beyond grateful for every chance and opportunity I've been given here. I'd say the biggest thing for me about Lowell is the amount of opportunities and support I've been given. I have been able to greatly expand my knowledge and experiences all throughout my education. With that being said, we should not be restricting those opportunities to expand knowledge, such as the library. The library is a place for students to enjoy a good book and learn more about themselves as well as the world around them. We are constantly encouraging our students to read, rightfully so. Therefore, we should not be restricting the books our students can read. Any high school has such a variety of different students with different backgrounds, experiences, and maturity levels. Each and every student should be able to read books that interest and benefit them personally. Although you may not go and pick up The Sun and Her Flowers from the library, a student like me who has had different experiences and a high maturity level would enjoy reading it. In fact, I have read The Sun and Her Flowers. I relate to it on multiple levels and appreciate the literary value of the book, as well as the feeling of I'm not alone in my experiences. It is moments like that that can truly make an impact on a student. It is important that all students feel welcome, supported, and heard in school. Literature is just one of the many ways to build those positive feelings in students. Just because a book is too sensitive or mature for one person does not mean we should be restricting it from someone who would benefit from reading it. Now, once again, I'm grateful for all of the experiences and opportunities I have had here at Lowell. I hope that the expansion of that continues here at Lowell and I can come back from college and see students enjoying their time and experiencing new opportunities instead of being restricted. Once again, I want to say thank you to the board for always supporting and representing Lowell well. Thank you for caring about our schools and community. I'm so happy for everything you've provided us with. Thank you.
Any additional?
Oh, sorry, that's it.
Next order of business is our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. And want to start off by congratulating our graduates. Emma did a great job with the names, reading all of 273 names in the stadium. Many people are responsible for making that evening a special one, and just thank you to all people on Lowell staff who were a part of that. And also thanks to the weather for its cooperation that night as well. Also, something new tied to graduation this year. I want to extend thanks to Mr. Goff, our elementary principal, Cindy Johnston, and everyone who helped organize the parade of graduates at our elementary school. After the graduation rehearsal, students traveled to each elementary school that they attended. It was great for the graduates. It was great for the teachers of those graduates, parents, and their elementary students to see those graduates as role models and to see what's possible as they continue through school. We talked about the MHSAA, a couple of non-MHSAA events. Our boys volleyball team won a state championship last weekend in a newly sport, kind of a new sport in the state of Michigan. Our shooting team also participated in its state championship. In MHSAA sports, our lacrosse team went to the state semifinals. They were rated sixth, or they were seeded sixth in their regional. Won the regional, won the quarterfinal, and went to the semifinals. So it was an exciting run by our boys lacrosse team. Congratulations to the girls team too. Also, we had individual athletes who represented Lowell in track and field and golf in their state tournaments as well. Also wanted to make a comment about the OK Conference realignment. There's been reports in MLive and in the Lowell Ledger about the realignment. And so next year, Lowell will continue competing in the OK White. The following year, the league voted to, Lowell would shift into a newly formed division. It's a repurposed division, the OK Black. I think it was reported, I want to say 42-6 or around that was the vote to approve the new configuration of the OK Conference. Lowell was one of the 6 no votes on that. The reason why was just there are 3 schools from the Muskegon area in that conference, and just the travel and the strain that that would put on families with our challenges with transportation. And so, you know, we're losing some rivalries with schools that are nearby. So I'm hoping that there will be benefits to the new league. I'm concerned about participation with just some of that transportation. I'm concerned about late nights during the week as our teams are traveling to, to the lake shore. But, having said that, we will make the best of that. Dustin mentioned about the retirements of Steve Nelson and Tim Berge, so I also just want to wish them well in their retirement, big changes in our operations department in the next couple weeks. If you had to ask me 4 people who know the district and the buildings better than anyone, they've all been mentioned tonight with Steve Turnbull, Greg Pratt, Tim Berge, and Steve Nelson. Another thing that happened since we met last was we learned about the death of Steve Campschulte. And Steve taught government history at Lowell High School from 1985 until the end of last school year. Steve was a true educator who sunk his heart into his profession. He led study trips to Europe. He started Lowell High School's Model United Nations group, and he was always educating, no matter where he was and what he was doing. I thank him for elevating the level of conversation at our own dinner table and when my kids had him as a teacher, and as a colleague and a mentor of mine in the social studies department. Just remember Steve for making school fun. He always wanted what was best for his students and his colleagues, and he always reminded me how lucky we are to be in this profession and not only have the opportunity to work with young people, but how important it is to have fun while we're doing it as well. So thank you to Steve for all of that you've brought to our community and to our school systems. A couple other things just to comment on. I mentioned earlier this year, I referenced a report from Common Sense Media about the students who have access to pornography online. During May, the U.S. Surgeon General released a report as well about social media and youth mental health. Just some statistics from that report that 95% of youth ages 13 through 17 report using social media platform. 40% of children ages 8 to 12 use social media in spite of the age minimum on many platforms to establish an account at age 13. The report does call for more research and discusses potential benefits of social media to create community for youth, but it also talks about parallels to increases in anxiety, increases in depression, symptoms associated with ADHD, exposure to bullying and harassment that kids may face online, and bad actors that may inhabit those spaces as we're looking for children. So just as we're having these conversations, just as a school system, we're going to continue to engage students and families to bring in awareness regarding the risks that are present online, and how as a school system and as a society, we can help students develop their digital identities to maintain a healthy relationship with their devices, with social media, and with the things that, the risks that are associated with online behavior as well. The other thing that I just wanted to mention was that after the May board meeting, we learned about a complaint that was filed with Lowell Police regarding our library books. In May, when the board voted to accept the recommendation of the review committee, the board followed established board policies for review of materials using standards that include the nature of the complaint, precedents and case law related to First Amendment cases and other court cases, book reviews and classifications by outside agencies, as well as the LAS curriculum development policy. The board has given thoughtful consideration to these complaints, the recommendations of the review committee, input from community members, and your own review of these books. Now Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker has weighed in. We obtained a copy of that letter that he sent to Lowell Police through a Freedom of Information Act request. In that letter, Prosecutor Becker states that the vote of a Board of Education to approve a book in a school is not a criminal offense. He articulates the reasons why, including statements that have been measured, relative to the Miller test and some of those First Amendment things, that considered as a whole, the work appeals to meet the level of a criminal offense, that considered as a whole, the work appeals to the prurient interest of minors as determined by community standards, that it is patently offensive to a contemporary local community standards of adults of what is suitable for minors, And considered as a whole, it lacks serious literary, artistic, political, educational, and scientific value for minors. I just want to reiterate my support and our support for the school district's library program. And although I'm not able to do so as eloquently as some of the students and community members who have shared their support throughout this year, the LAS Community Collection Development Policy states that in the area of material selection, the Library Media Center should provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty with consideration for diversity of appeal and different points of view. The library media specialist must place principle above personal opinion and reason above prejudice in selection of materials of the highest quality in order to ensure a comprehensive collection appropriate for all users of the Library Media Center. Therefore, the Library Media Center should provide materials that will enrich and support the curriculum, taking into consideration the varied interests, abilities, learning needs, learning styles, and maturity levels of students served. Provide materials and teachers for students first and foremost that will encourage growth and knowledge and that will help develop literary, cultural, and aesthetic appreciation and ethical standard. Provide materials which reflect the ideas and beliefs of religious, social, political, historical, and ethnic groups and their contribution to the local, national, and world heritage and cultures, thereby enabling students to develop intellectual integrity in forming just judgments. Thank you to Mrs. Beechler, our principals, Mr. Vandermeulen, and our Media Center staff for their work to implement our correct collection development policy in order to meet these goals and increase literacy. LAS remains committed to giving parents a voice in selecting what materials their students have access to. Still maintain that communication between families and school staff is the best way to make sure that the values of individual families are honored. If a book in our collection contains content that is more mature, we will continue to adjust accordingly, as we've discussed in previous meetings as well. So just in closing, I just wanted to share that response, as we go through these community conversations, that we have policies. We have meetings scheduled this week to continue to discuss these policies and as they continue to evolve to make sure that we support these practices. So, thank you.
Thank you. Board communications. Gary.
I'd just like to say, with the nursing, I really appreciate what we're doing with that. It helps the community and all the students.
Tom. Lori.
We currently have in relation to what you were saying about how the community and the school district kind of interacts. We currently have 3 of our LHS art teachers whose work is on display at the Arts Council. And I think the exhibit goes through the end of this month, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But Sarah Ellis and what's Ms. Cosgrove's name? Christine Cosgrove and Emma. I should have written this down. I wasn't thinking that I was going to say that tonight. But anyways, they all have works down there. I'd encourage you to go down and see the Arts Council is open Tuesday through Sunday, I think from 10 to 6 or something like that. And really, really, really good stuff. It's exciting to see, along with other artists from around the area, just the quality of the artwork that is being done by the people who are teaching our students, art. So it's very exciting. So anyways, and congratulations to the graduates and to our sports teams for going way farther, I think lacrosse in particular. And maybe that's because we now have a decent lacrosse field that they can practice in. I don't know. I hope so. And that's it.
As a parent of a graduate this year, the parade through the elementary school was very powerful. It's a great tradition. I hope it's something that we can keep going forward.
None. I'd like to thank all of the teachers, the administration, the bus drivers, everybody for helping us through another fantastic school year. Appreciate all of the work of my fellow board members throughout this year. downs and a lot of successes, and still a lot of work to continue to go forward with. I appreciate Sonia, the budget updates. I know we keep talking about the fiscal cliff, and it's something that we have has been part of our conversation since we accepted those funds in order to keep us on par with the rest of the schools in this area with leveraging those funds. But we also did it in a very proactive way, knowing that we would have to get back to that budget neutrality. And I know that that's something that we continue to talk about, and the plan has been in place, and I am confident that we know how to manage that fiscal cliff because we've managed through many different budgetary items. And the things that we see and hear about in these reports, having been on the board for a number of years, I think, other than Pat, I've got the second longest tenure. These things are cyclical. We see these things. We plan for them. We talk about them. We see and understand what is coming next. We have planned for the financial components of these items through our fund balance. We look through them when we work through our contract negotiations, and we're ready for these items. So I appreciate the diligence that has gone into all of these reports. I'm very grateful to have the leadership team that sits and represents our school and continues to put the best components forward in what they give, providing the best results, which are really our students, and you saw that in the graduation day. You see that in the students that are out in our world today, being lifelong learners and delivering fantastic things for a number of people. So I appreciate that. With that, school year is over. We've got one more workshop and a little bit of a break for July. So with that, I would request that we adjourn today's school board meeting. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Lori. Support by Tom. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously at 8:16. I was going to give you just.
Oh, we were.
So bad.
Yeah.
It's like I left
Thank you.